You know, for a brand that feels like it's been around forever, American Express has pretty much been fighting an internal war with itself for over a century. And it all boils down to one simple question. Seriously, what is American Express? If you think you know the answer, well, you might be surprised. The company itself has spent decades just trying to figure out what it is, and maybe more importantly, what it really wants to be. And that struggle, that constant internal conflict, that's the story we're going to dig into. It's really a tale of two completely different identities, one that was built for the public eye and another one that was kept very, very quiet. So on one hand, you've got the public image we all know, the friendly travel company, that iconic charge card, a brand totally built on service. But then, behind the curtain, there's a whole other machine running the show, this secretive, super cautious financial institution that was powered by a hidden source of profit. This is the core conflict, and it has shaped almost every single major decision in the company's entire history. Okay, so let's start with that secret engine. To really get it, we have to wind the clock all the way back to the 1890s, and a very, very frustrated company president on a miserable trip to Europe. This guy right here is J.C. Fargo, the head of AmEx, and he is furious. He's trying to travel through Europe using what were called letters of credit, basically the standard way for rich people to get cash abroad, and it's a total disaster. The second he gets off the beaten path, his money is useless. So he comes back to New York and he is determined to fix this problem. And his solution, born out of just pure frustration, was the American Express Traveler's Check. It was this brilliant, simple product you could cash almost anywhere, and it was insured if you lost it. For anyone traveling internationally, this was a complete game changer. But here's the crazy part. The tiny fee Amex charged on each check, it was basically nothing. It wasn't the real prize. So where was all the money really coming from? The answer is this beautiful, powerful concept in finance called the float. Now, think about it like this. When you bought a bunch of travelers' checks, you gave Amex your cash, but you didn't cash all those checks on day one, right? So that created this massive pool of customer money. We're talking billions of dollars that Amex was just holding. They could take that cash, invest it, and keep all the profits for themselves, totally interest-free. And the scale here was just enormous. At its peak, the float was worth nearly $3 billion. This wasn't some side hustle. This was the business. For decades, just how important this was one of the company's best-kept secrets. It was the quiet financial engine powering the whole public-facing brand. Which brings us to the second huge conflict, this constant battle between the company's ultra-conservative leadership and the rogue employees who actually built the brand we know today, often by completely ignoring orders. And the leader of that conservative old guard was the very same guy who invented the traveler's check, J.C. Fargo. He might have made a product for travelers, but man, he had total contempt for them. He called tourists rabble and loafers and was absolutely convinced that building a business to serve them would be a path to ruin. But at the exact same time, one of his employees, a man named William Dalabo, was over in Paris with a totally different idea. He saw that rabble and he saw a massive business opportunity. So he just decided to build a travel services empire, whether his boss in New York liked it or not. So how did he get away with it? Well, by following something that was called the Chicago Rule. This really shows you the split inside the company. In the New York office, whatever Fargo said went. But out in the field, the rule was different. You try to persuade the boss, and if that doesn't work, you just do it anyway and hope you don't get caught. And so, bit by bit, Dalaba built the AmEx travel business right under Fargo's nose. It started off small, just a mail desk for clients. Then came reading rooms. He used his official approval for ticket departments as a cover to quietly build these full-service tourist operations. He literally created the public face of the brand, the friend to the traveler, by deceiving his own president. And this same internal battle, it played out all over again years later with the company's most famous product. If you think Amex was reluctant to get into the travel business, it was downright hostile to the idea of a charge card. By the 1950s, the world was changing. Diners Club had invented the charge card, and people loved it. Pretty soon, airlines and hotels were launching their own cards. The pressure on American Express was huge, but the company, true to its nature, just resisted. They didn't see an opportunity. They saw a threat to their golden goose, the traveler's check. So they finally hired consultants to study the whole idea, And the verdict came back exactly how management wanted it to. The experts concluded an American Express card would be a money-losing disaster, a bad business proposition. So it seemed like the idea was dead and buried. And then something just snapped. The president, Ralph Reed, was in a meeting where his executives were all talking about how to fight off the card trend. And Reed, who had been totally against the idea, suddenly cut them all off. With no explanation, he just gave a one-sentence order that changed everything. We're going to get into the card business. And just like that, American Express was dragged, kicking and screaming, into its own future. This whole internal tug-of-war, the cautious bank versus the public-facing brand, it all came to a massive, dramatic head in 1963, with a scandal so huge it almost destroyed the entire company. It's known today as the Salad Oil Scandal. So, a warehousing subsidiary of AmEx was guaranteeing loans based on receipts for these huge tanks of soybean oil. The only problem? The tanks were mostly filled with seawater. The oil just wasn't there. It was a massive and kind of brilliant fraud. When the fraud was uncovered, the potential liability was just staggering. $60 million in 1963 money. This was more than enough to completely wipe American Express off the map. The company was staring bankruptcy right in the face. So this was the moment of truth. The CEO, Howard Clark, had two choices. The legal path was the easy out. See, the fraud happened in a subsidiary, which was technically its own company. He could just let that subsidiary go bankrupt, limit Amex's losses, and walk away. That was the move of the cautious, secretive financial institution. But the other path, the moral path, was to honor the brand's public promise of trust and pay every single dime, even if it meant risking total financial ruin. In what became a defining moment for the company, Clark chose the moral path. He went to his board and declared that American Express would stand behind its obligations. It was this huge, historic bet on the brand's reputation over its own balance sheet. He chose to be the friend to the traveler, the name you could trust, even when it could have destroyed them. And in doing that, he basically cemented the brand's identity for the next 50 years. In the end, paying all those claims didn't bankrupt the company at all. In fact, the public trust it created made the brand stronger than ever. Which kind of leaves us with one final thought. The history of American Express is this wild story of rogue employees, reluctant revolutions, and near-death experiences. And it poses this really fascinating question for any big legacy brand. What's actually the more dangerous threat? A shocking public scandal or a quiet, internal failure to ever evolve?